There's no judgment, only grace. Every scar has a sacred place. In the truth, we're not alone. Every story finds a home. Come as you are, don't be afraid. You belong here anyway. We rise in love, we heal in trust. This is where real begins. No judgment.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to No Judgment Here with Tish Ross, the podcast. Thank you for coming in and joining. We are talking about mental health today. I don't think that we can talk enough about mental health. As I was sharing with my guest, Kathryn, who's here tonight to share her story, that we all have our own battles, right? I think that people go through sadness. It may not be clinically diagnosed as depression, but we go through our bouts of our own personal mental health. And I think it's important for us to share our stories. And that's what this podcast is all about. Like I always say, no one can tell your story and impact those that are listening the way that you can. And so I'm blessed and honored to be able to have guests like Kathryn come on and share their experiences with us. This particular podcast is not for little kiddos. So if you have children running around, you may want to either move in another room or maybe put some earbuds in. But viewer and listener discretion is advised. We are not doctors. We don't claim to be doctors or therapists. We're not licensed in that field. I'm not. But we are here to share the raw truth, real stories, what we've gone through, where we are now, how we got through, how we're getting through, and where we're going. So without further ado, I am going to bring my guest in. Her name is Kathryn Henderson, and she is here to share her story.
Hi, I am so glad to be here with you today. So thank you for having me.
Of course. Of course. Thank you for being here, Kathryn. I'm so glad that we connected. You know, God is so good in terms of what I like to call the ripple effect. You meet one person and then you meet another and then you meet another. And I don't think we can meet enough people. And so it was, I thank you for reaching out. And boy, you've been through a lot. And I'm just honored that you said yes to coming on and to sharing your story. And so, Kathryn, tell us a little bit about yourself. You married, what you do for a living, where you live, where you were born, all the things.
I am 35 years old and I am married to my significant other, my husband, for we will celebrate 13 years. So he's definitely been a part of this journey with me. We celebrate 13 years. We have two kiddos, one not so much a kiddo. I have a daughter that I inherited. My husband had in a previous relationship, and I just love her so much. And she has her own little family. Actually, I'm a grandma, so I go by Mimi.
Oh, how sweet.
I am so thankful just to experience that love. There were some days I didn't know if I would be here for those type of things. So, and then we have David, who is 11. And me and my husband had David quite quickly. We met and we both just love the Lord and wanted to honor him. I do want to disclose that I am not a psychiatric professional in sharing my story, my journey. And yes, if there are little ones around or a trigger warning for anything, I will be sharing some of my suicide attempts. And so I just want to give that trigger warning for people if this may be too much, but I'm hoping that I can bring a source of comfort to people who've experienced things, essentially. So I'm going to take it from the bottom. I was born in California, right outside of San Francisco in Marin County. To Karen and Richard, I don't know much about them. I was taken into the foster care system at 8.5 months. My grandmother just saw things that were compromising our youth. And so she ended up calling CPS and the foster care, the social services took us, and she was given some time. They asked her to seek mental health, and unfortunately, she did not stay on those medications. And so that was one of the main driving sources when my life evolved. You know, my birth mom, she lost us girls. I have a sister. We are 14 months apart. She's older than me.
Yeah, I don't know, as young children, I don't know, or I'll speak for myself as an adult, things that happened growing up and a lot of things that I don't remember in my childhood. But do you, as an adult, can you remember how you felt at times not knowing who your parents were? Like, what did that do to you, I guess is my question. I'm sure it did a lot of things.
They were very transparent with me. Are you saying once I was adopted, not being with my birth family?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I was fortunate that even though because of the risks that were in the adoption, and the instability from my parents, we did maintain, communication with my aunt and my grandmother. And so I truthfully have always worn those battle scars like they were a victory. And I would tell everybody that, because they would say, oh, you look like your mom or you look like your dad. And I'd be a little one just bebopping around and be like, oh, that's not I'm adopted, but that's cool that you think that we look alike. Like
Yes.
just been really outspoken. So I didn't, I did when I got older. And when I really started processing some of my journey in therapy.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I interrupted you, but so you were adopted when you were 8 years old.
No,
And
I was adopted when I was 2.5 years old. I was
Gotcha.
taken by the foster care system at 8.5 months old. So I was with my mom. I was with her until 8.5 months. Sorry, just to clarify. And then at 2.5 months, we got adopted by our parents who adopted us.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. All right. And so your adopted parents, you have a great relationship with them and they're good parents?
I have a really great relationship with my dad, and that was something he nurtured. To be transparent, a little background. Most of my trauma, believe it or not, just being so young and being able to be adopted at 2.5 years of age. I was adopted by a woman who, after I've done much therapy, I realized never healed from her own wounds, and they bled into her own illnesses and her own things that turned out to be quite horrific as a child. At this point, and I did therapy for about a decade, and I do continue therapy because it's like maintenance, it's like the medications that I take can only go so far. And so sometimes I've got to talk it out and process it, and I get stuck because there was a lot of fear as a child being raised by someone who was never wrong, someone who, my first therapist that I sat down with gave me a book, and the book was called Will I Ever Be Good Enough? And it's Healing the Daughters of a Narcissistic Mother. So I read that book, and I just had this, and I had just had my son. So we're talking 2013. And I was doing, some people may not know what this is, but it's called doll therapy. And she picked this doll, this little stuffed animal. And it was a little girl, and she had pigtails in it and a tutu on. And she came in within the first couple sessions, and she allowed me to rescue that little girl that was afraid. The abuse that really affected my mental health and still does to this day. I mean, I manage it, but it's still hard, those wounds and the fear that a narcissist will put into somebody to maintain controlling their situation is life altering, and it's life changing. And there was even this, in all transparency, this fear to share my story. We have very different versions.
Tell us a little bit about your childhood, how you were raised, a little bit about your trauma. And I do remember you sharing that you, as a child, moved a countless number of times, which that in of itself can be quite traumatizing as well. So tell us a little bit about your childhood and some of your trauma.
So we were adopted and we moved out of California, which was where all my dad's family was. It was, and we moved shortly. I didn't understand, obviously 2.5, 3, 4, 5 years old, you're not really involved in observing the situation. You just kind of go where life takes you. And we moved out to Minnesota. My dad ended up purchasing a business and really started investing in providing for our family. And I really, something that happened as a child, I had to, when I realized that my dad was more of the victim in the situation than the other parent, that my mom was, I had to unfold it differently. But so dad was away and mom was at home, and I just remember this like gut-wrenching fear, and and as an adult, it's created this avoidant, like I avoid conflict. I can weather the conflict, but the math afterwards and is tough. And so I learned at a young age how to keep my mom happy. I learned that if she had questions, to answer them, whether I was outing my sister or my brother. She tried to turn the story on the abuse. Like, I remember this one time that I was in this bath and my butt was black and blue. And I mean, it was bad. And like, she almost was like, who did that? She asked me, who did that to you? I'm like, I knew she whooped my butt. Like, I knew that as the primary parent and at home, I just had some horrific situations, and so did my sister. This is the thing, is I do want to preface that I have had, as an adult family members affirm that they witnessed these things. So as these things were going on, because of our birth parents' mental health, she would blame it on, like, oh, they're just schizophrenic and they're just having delusions. And like, I mean, that's really not, that is horrible, because there are successful people with mental health. And so the fact that you are hiding behind your accountability, the things that she was doing. One time I had my aunt tell me this clear as day. We were making something, I think it was pizzas. We would do pizza night on a regular basis, especially with my dad. He loved making homemade pizzas, and I spilt flour on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And she would put me in timeout. Her forms of discipline, I believe that time she slapped me across the face. One time my dad came home and I still had the handprint on my face. And he warned her, like, if this happens, I'm calling, like, we're not doing this. So she became very secretive. She became very good at hiding her accountability. There were times where I was afraid of the dark. I was afraid of the dark going to bed as a little girl. And my timeout would be in the dark in the basement. And it was like, there's times where she would put me in timeout on my bed, and I would lay there for hours and hours. And I remember in the first house before we started running, and it wasn't, I do want to preface, like, people move because they have parents in careers. They have, that it is hard to move, but it always seemed like when she got caught or she wasn't having her way, she pissed off the wrong person. We were getting drugged through the mud.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And so if people held her accountable or questioned her, they would just get rid of them, family members or not. But as children, it was like we were just silenced and silenced and silenced. And so from Minnesota, go ahead.
Sorry. And one thing that I was thinking is how terrible it is to have other people witness and know that these things happened.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think sometimes narcissistic people or abusers are so good at what they do, they start to make you question yourself. And I think that that's where trauma sometimes triggers trauma, PTSD. I can't think of the word, but you start to question,
Oh,
did this happen?
yeah. No,
Is
I'm
it
telling
me?
you, absolutely. And this is my first time ever sharing my story, and I'm 35 years old. And I'm saying on a platform, I have never, it took me because she just told I mean, I had a family member that I love dearly, and their sibling just came at me with like, oh, she's just hard to deal with because she's schizophrenic. And I'm like, well, no, those things really, really did happen. And my mom, my birth mom, like the story is, she's schizophrenic. I believe she endured trauma that's not processed, that is cycling and cycling. It'll cycle and cycle. And then you begin to live your life. And I had a season of this. This is why I dove into therapy, because I knew that I had to heal and bring the change for my family, for my kids.
Narcissistic people, I don't know what it is, but my ex was narcissistic. And even to this day, and this is years, I'm sure, like it can decades, that still, I haven't talked to him in years and years, but still, if I think about having to speak to him, thank God my children are adults now and I don't have to, but at any time, if I had to even text or call, I was scared, like you said, feel sick. I just would be sick to my stomach, a nervous wreck, and thought, I don't want to do that. I was afraid. And yes, they tell very different stories and paint completely different pictures. And there's some narcissistic people are really good at what they do. And I wished I would have had a world microphone to tell the world, if anybody ever talks to this person, if you want to come and hear the truth, come and talk to me, because they're not telling the truth. So you guys, and you had said that, yes, children in like healthy, with healthy family members and parents, they do move constantly or often because of a job, but you guys moved because
she was running from the accountability. And so as if this tells you any brain, I was in second grade, I believe. And between second and third, there was a book, and I believe it's A Child Called It. And I started reading that, and I just felt so inspired because I connected to this child and I wasn't alone. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't alone. I went to my teacher just like it was nothing, just like, oh, they're not my real parents. I went to my teacher and divulged that I related to this child. And that book, am I quoting the right, A Child Called It?
Yes.
That's where yes. Okay. And so that book is not something that a second grader should be relating to. And I just felt like, so let's, in the narcissistic circle, in this book, the previous book that I mentioned, Will I Ever Be Good Enough? She talks about the roles that happen and play when there is a narcissistic mother. There is the scapegoat, there's the trophy child, and there's the golden child. And I was the trophy child. Now you may think, oh, at least you're not the scapegoat. Well,
Mm.
the disadvantage to being the trophy child, if you think about it, a trophy sits on a shelf and it's only taken down or looked at when there's an advantage to what? To show it off. And so I learned how to perform as the trophy child. I learned to smile when guests came over. I learned to give the right answers. I learned to act like nothing was wrong when Dad came into town. So let's kind of circle around in this story. So we were in Minnesota, and she started an education, and my dad put her through college, and she wanted to further her education. And he said, well, my parents are in Arizona. You know, you can go there and we'll get you through your education. And I believe the goal was to return to Minnesota because my dad was working on this business and it was doing quite well. She took us on a vacation and left my dad to pack the entire house. We went on this vacation and she tagged a friend along. At this time, when she entered into the college field, she started getting into Ouija boards and New Age stuff. And I watched this woman that was able to present herself slowly. I believe that impacted as well spiritually and influenced the marriage. And because we were Catholic, but like we really didn't know like our faith.
Right.
We attended and showed up, and it didn't impact our lives, and we went home and went back to the same mess at that point. So she took us to Arizona, and that was second, third, and she decided by the time my dad got there that she wanted a divorce. So in the state of Arizona at that time, they were like very pro women.
Mm.
And now you just relocated all of us. And the income, and I'll tell you, like, one of the situations that happened, like, she made out very well in the divorce, and she had my sister call my dad and tell him that there's no food out in the house. And he was living above the shop with no home because she sold the house that he could live in Minnesota. And we lived in his house that he gained in the divorce. And it was ugly. She was working for an attorney, some sort of attorney's office or something, to where I ended up researching because I'm like, I'm going to find out for myself as an adult. And I learned how to read like the documents, and I believe what I was reading stated that she gave like, don't look at me that way complaint in one of the interactions with my dad. And so as an adult, I began to understand, like, okay, I'm not crazy. Like, it was really that bad. It was bad. And I needed that for my healing, because if you're questioning everything that you're remembering, it's really hard to press through some of those memories. And I resorted at a very young age to, like, when I would be disciplined, I felt that if I disciplined myself harder, she wouldn't do it as hard. So I resorted to, like, hitting my head on the ground and hitting my head on the headboard. And she, like, one time she laughed. Like, I could never as a parent. And I'm a firm discipliner, as, like, I want my kid to have integrity. I want him to be honest. I want him to have a voice in my house, because I didn't have a voice, but, like, with respect. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes I reel my 11-year-old in, but, like, I just wanted my kids so bad to be themselves and be free to themselves. And I was absolutely terrified to parent, because all I knew was this. And so, my dad was coming in for visits when we lived in Arizona, but he had to remain working the business out in Minnesota. And so I guess we would tell him things, but then, like, beg him not to say anything, because, like, he had to go back and we were there.
Gosh.
And he lost and lost and lost in court. I mean, there's no justice in the justice system. I'm sorry, there's not. There's, in my life and pummeling through what I had to go through as a kid. So then, and she will make your bones feel like they're shattering just by silencing you and looking at you like, don't you dare say. Don't say.
And so you had mentioned when we were chatting that as you guys moved again and again, because your mother was obviously running from the people that didn't agree with her, or
Yeah.
that there was a time where your mom actually got caught hitting your sister, and it was your
Yeah,
cousin, I believe.
Go ahead. Yes. We were older, and my sister was the scapegoat, and my mom got really comfortable with abuse. And so I was going into sophomore year, my sister was going into her junior year, and we had gone out to a family member, and one of my favorite people of all time. We had gone out to the family member's house, and she either hit my sister in the back of the head. She liked to pull her hair a lot. And so my cousin witnessed it and called my dad and said, you need to get your girls. Like, this is not safe. This is not safe for them. And I do believe that at that time she tried as long as possible to keep us there, hoping my dad could show up in time. But it was from northern to southern of a drive, and there was a verbal altercation. I remember sitting at the table. It was over politics, and she ended up snatching us up and taking us down to the south and southern part of California. And I mean, I'm telling you, we walked into my aunt's house like, don't you say a word, and like nothing was wrong. Nothing was wrong. And like, I think that there's a lot of guilt for the adults in these situations, because like, and I had like, why didn't you save us? Why didn't you intervene? Why didn't you, like, I had those moments too. But like, for them, like, I had to come to a point in my healing where like, they were just as helpless as I was. Their hands were tied just as much as mine were. And so we drove south, and I think we stayed like a night. And I remember the drive, because nobody dare say a word at my aunt's house. And that was my birth aunt. So like, you put the smooze on, you put the, oh, hi, you put the,
Yes.
all okay. And she did most of the acting, to be honest. You just smile and nod. And so we had a drive from Southern California out back to Arizona, because we remained in Arizona. I remember sitting in the back of that convertible all the way, just listening to her torment my sister with whatever nasty things that she could come up with. And it, as much as I used to say my sister had it worse, I think that everybody in that circle has a weight of trauma. Mine was do as you say and keep her happy and stay silent. So we went back to Arizona, and my sister already had a vacation planned to go to my dad's. So it had to look normal, right? It had to look natural, like there was nothing wrong.
Right.
And so she got on the plane, she did her visit, and we relocated. And so I shut down, and my sister went to live with my dad, and it was me and her. And I was going into my sophomore year of high school. I was at a brand new high school. I didn't know anybody. I felt lost. I felt alone. And I felt isolated. And my mental health, that was the first time that I ever really, really plummeted into depression.
And you mentioned too that your mom even decided that she was going to be a teacher. That she wanted to be a teacher, or she became a teacher.
Yeah, she did. She became a teacher, and that was one of the interesting things because she switched me high schools again. So I was in 3 high schools. This is where she was student teaching. She had students that loved her and hated me. I had some really good friends that I ended up connecting with, and they were safe people, and like one of them in particularly she knew a lot. Like they would pick me up and they would kind of rescue me from the situation. But I slowly lost myself throughout every time I switched high school. I just stopped. And after seeing her completely destroy my sister, I didn't trust her, and she knew I didn't trust her. And that's when so we'll backtrack. When my sister left, that's when her and me fighting started happening. I remember she came in my room. I had a guest over. I was supposed to be going to church camp. By the way, I didn't go to church camp. And she took the door off the hinges because I slammed the door. And she's in there teaching me a lesson. I'm like, I know who you are, and I don't trust you, and I'll never trust you again. If it wasn't for the saving grace of the staff having to deal with her, I probably wouldn't have graduated. I ended up getting my license and a car, and I was working at like a restaurant slash bar slash, like, they would come bet on the horses and whatever. I was the hostess, and I would seat people, and I had a this is not the time. This is the time, if there's kids in your room and they can comprehend this is not the time for them to be in this room, because I am going to be a little bit blunt kind of about my journey my senior year. And this gentleman came in, and he had these really cool shoes on. I questioned, I'm like, where'd you get those shoes? They were like made out of hemp, like rope, and they like fit his foot, and we ended up exchanging numbers. And I didn't know much about this guy. He told me he was closer to my age than he was, and he invited us over, and we were underage drinking. And he was pouring my drinks, and he ended up putting something in my drink to where I blacked out. And I, at that point, had not had intercourse, and he stole my virginity. And the only reason why I knew that was because I jumped in the shower when I got home, and that clot had fallen out. And first time ever, yeah, I text him and I question it, and he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And my friend that witnessed it and was there just had plans to be in the military, and that would have really, to her, it wasn't worth compromising her career. So I felt like, crap, now you're my witness and you won't say anything. So I felt like I had to like shuffle on.
You never got any kind of support, or no one believed you, no help from after you were raped?
The nurse asked me to report it. Can you want to, like, it had to be I was 18 years old. I declined because I didn't get help. I just kept trugging along. I just had to keep going. Like, what else was I didn't know what to do. I was afraid that nobody would believe me. And I will tell you that I found out later. I found out that this gentleman does that to women's drinks in the bar that he goes to on a regular basis. And I was like, what? And it was a couple years later. So I just felt like, I felt guilt. I felt shame. I felt like if I would have reported it, I could have saved another woman from having that situation.
But at the same time, even though you were 18, and 18 is a legal adult, whatever, you also didn't have support, and you didn't get help yourself. And you had to process and work through what had happened to you. And to take on, it's
Yeah.
just the woulda, shoulda, couldas that are they kill you. I
Yeah.
wish I would have, I wish I should have, I probably could have. But, when you're being abused and traumatized yourself, man, there's no way. You can't. You can't.
No.
So what would you say, Kathryn, to, the underdeveloped minds, children? I mean, 18 is still a child, 19 still a child. We're still, our brains are still developing up until we're like 25, I believe. I may be wrong, but I know it's in our 20s. What would you say to a child that's feeling they're done? I'm done. I mean, and there is so much more life to live, and we know that as adults. But our wisdom, and having gone through this is why we share our stories, right? So that we can pour into someone who might be listening, who an 18-year-old, a 19-year-old, maybe a grown woman who is thinking, I think I'm done. I think I'm done. What would you say now that you have gone to therapy and you have moved past that feeling of I'm done? What would you say? What would you say to them?
I will say that in like raw transparency, that having an avoidance response to struggles, and there's times where that goes through my mind, and your story's not over yet.
Mm.
Somebody needs, if you tell one person that you made it, you could save a lineage of people, so they're here for their purpose.
Thank you for watching Prospera TV Network. We hope you're enjoying the show. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
And then so after, going through all of this and more, you again, you were out of the program and then you met your husband.
Yeah. So I got out of the program in 2000 and
20, no, not 2016. I think that.
no, 2016 was, yeah, no. So in 2011, I believe it was 2010, 2011, I got out. I went back to the church where it's a mega church. It's a huge church. And I went back there for service, and I ended up getting into a women's discipleship program where you meet like once a week and build relationships. And my husband actually served in the men's for a couple of years. So we ended up meeting, and him and I hit it off quite well. He came in with a bag of ice and wearing his Jesus shirt, and I was like, who's this guy? And I'm sitting at the table and he sits across from me at the table. And by the end of my evening there, he was sitting to my left and invited me to, he was helping with an adopt-a-block, which pretty much you go out into the community and you invite people in and you have a meal, and whatever needs are donated to the adopt-a-block, you distribute them and you give a word and pray for people and you send them home. And so he invited me, and that was we met on St. Patrick's Day. We got engaged at the end of June and we got married by November. And when I met my husband, I told him, he's like, I was like, he said something about crazy. And I was like, listen, what you don't know is I'm talking like mental health level. Like there are things that I battle with. And he's like, oh, it's fine. And I'll tell you, it's taken him 13 years. It's been an adjustment. So we got married and then we got pregnant with David the following February. And pregnancy was horrendous. Physically, the entire pregnancy, I just wasted away because I had hyperemesis and I was not on medications. That was a time that I stopped medications because I did not believe that they were safe for my kid. Now they say that they have those for people. I mean, all I've had is David. And so we had David and it was like the childhood abuse part surfaced. The things that I just like survived in and got through and smiled with, like my baby's crying and I think I was afraid that like all I could relate it to is this little girl who was in timeout for hours or locked in the basement. And like, thank God my mother-in-law came in and really, David wouldn't be, I say it all the time, David, without like the care, because that is when I really started therapy. I went inpatient, I got back on my medications, and that was 2013. And it took me a couple years to stabilize just because it was like the hormones, there was a combination. And then I was like really facing those demons that I just survived through my whole life, and I had some situations, I had some traumatic situations, and of course wanting to escape. In 2016, me and my husband had separated. We had some stuff going on in our marriage that people had no business being a part of, if you ask me. And I really did seek the Lord's face during that time. I'm like, okay, God, the only answer of him realizing that you're going to show him the truth of this scenario and I have to trust you. But it meant going through the situation, which was absolutely exhausting. And me and my husband were separated for a couple months, and I went and got another place to live. And I went out to visit my family for July, for 4th of July, and that's California. So I'm in Arizona. I flew out to California, and I had a cousin who, my dad's the youngest of 6. There's 14 cousins. So when I say my cousin, there's a lot of us, and she offered for me and David to come out and live. And so I called Dawn and I was like, hey, I'm going to return to my family. I need the support. I need the relationships in the community, and I'm not going to stay there.
Right.
And I want to raise my son. So I got home and he's like, I don't want a divorce. And I was like, now, like already, like you don't want a divorce. And so I was like, okay, well, I asked God to heal this and he did. But it was like, we moved back in together and there was a situation. I'm trying to figure out the best way to share the preface of the situation, because I haven't really thought about fully telling it. But there were some relationships and some family members, and there was an altercation. And one of my family members on my husband's side told me that I was just better off dead a long time ago. And I believed it. And I ended up taking my life, and I spent 10 days on life support.
Oh my gosh.
And my husband, I just took my medicine drawer, and I'm not saying do this. Suicide is not, it's not the answer, because look, I'm here.
Right.
And what I had
right.
to go through to recover, it wasn't worth it. I mean, my husband found me, and he called 911, and he told them to, they told him to start doing CPR, and he's like, she's fine, she's sleeping. But I had aspirated vomit, and my lungs were full of vomit. And so they came through, you know, they got there quickly, I guess. This is secondhand, but this is what my husband told me. And they put me on a gurney or a net. I don't know. They had to carry me down a flight of stairs, and they got me to the hospital, and my temperature was like fluctuating up and down. And they ended up taking me out to, in Phoenix, there's a hospital. I don't know. There's a hospital downtown. It's a Catholic hospital, but they took me down there because they have like learning for staff, and like they cover a lot. They were a large hospital. And they got me there, and they come to my husband, and they said, hey, there's like a 40-something% chance that we can save her life, but we have to medically paralyze her, and we have to put her into this contraption so we can like suck out the vomit in her lungs. And through all that, I contracted a deadly bacteria because of the vomit in the lungs. It started to grow like a fungus, deadly bacteria thing going on. So they were suiting in and suiting up, and my dad got on a plane, and he literally walked in as they were medically paralyzing me. And I guess I responded. He said, hey, Katie, I'm here. And I guess I like shook my head at him. The percentage was very low that I was coming out of that machine. And I did come out of the machine. And something really cool that happened later on, I had this girl contact me. She was actually in high school. Actually, and this is just how God works through everything. She did my first high school and like my elementary years. And she messaged me, and she was the x-ray technician that took the first picture of my lungs. And she told me, she said, I am not, I just prayed that God would. And she's not really even to my knowledge, she wasn't a Christian, but she said a prayer anyway. And she's like, it's not her time to go. Like, she's not, and the fact that years later she had reached out to me, it just blew my mind. And so
Wow.
I went into the contraption, I came out of the contraption, and then they were trying to wake me up, like have me come out, and I was flailing. I guess I kicked a nurse in the face. My husband went to the doctor. He's like, you cannot wake her up without anxiety medication. And they were weeding, they didn't want to, because they were weeding everything out that was going on and trying to stabilize. And so he's like, there's no way. And they tried a couple times, and then they told them that the next, they said, if after this time she's not gonna wake up, then we're gonna have to give her a tracheotomy. And it was Sunday, my friend came through the door, and she was like, they were putting a syringe into my IV, and it was that, I believe, to my knowledge of what I was told, it was that what Michael Jackson like overdosed on, that they called it milk juice or something. I don't know. And they were And she's like, what are you doing? Nobody's here. And they're like, well, we'll wake her up. And she's like, no. And so she called my dad. She called my husband. And my husband's like, we've tried so many times. She's not going to wake up. So he goes to church. My dad gets in the car, starts driving down the road. And sure enough, I woke up.
Oh,
And
wow.
I did not remember anything. I thought I was in a car accident or something. Sorry, I got to get my phone charger. I thought I was in a car accident, and I woke up and I had to use the bathroom. But I was like bedridden. But all of a sudden, all my digestive tract started working, and they told me I had to stay still and be able to still breathe with the breathing tube in my throat.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought in my brain, I'm like, there's a golf ball in my throat. And my dad and my friend were just trying to get me to not, they didn't want me to pull the tube out of my throat.
Right.
And so that was in 2016. And I experienced going through EMDR after that to process which is a form of therapy to process trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked. I haven't had a lot of residual, and it just, like, my family had to heal, and
And so where are you now with your, I know that you said that you went through a lot of therapy, but it's something that you continue to work
yeah.
through. It's something that you continue to do. And it's so good. Therapy is so good. And I think I'm kind of, not kind of, but I like to, whenever I have someone on that we're talking about mental health, is to destroy the stigma that therapy or seeing,
Mm.
a psychologist or a pastor or, just
Yeah.
someone who goes to therapy. It's so good for you. It is so good for you. And so where are you now? How do you feel? Do you still go to therapy? And what
Yeah.
do you do on those days where you feel like, man, I'm not feeling it today. I'm not feeling good today. What do you do?
Well, I do have a therapist. In the time that the world kind of shut down for 2021,
Mm-hmm.
22, I mean, there was some small blurps, but I started seeing a therapist online, and I take my medication. It works. It works if you work it. And my depression has been more lately, believe it or not. And my first step is getting out of bed and doing it afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Doing it afraid of failing, doing it afraid of, just making sure that I continue to utilize the decade that I've put into being well,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And what is your relationship like with the Lord now?
I love him. He's my best friend. Going from the West Coast to the South has been very trying. I'm actually in the Bible Belt, and I believe that there's less Christians in the Bible Belt, but that's another talk for another day. I spend time with him. I read my word. I worship. I pray. Our lifestyle is to be the church as a family. And wherever God takes that, he does take that. So we're trusting in this season and in this time that this is where we are. And yeah.
I love that. I love that you say that, we are trusting him in this season. We are trusting where we are. And, it's like you said, God is, he's your best friend. He is there for you. And on the daily, I know I have conversations with him on the daily all day.
Yeah.
This morning when I woke up, that, you know, just all day long. And he never fails, even when we think or wonder, where is he? He's there. He's there.
Right.
And you start to see that when you start to mature and grow, and you draw closer to him. And then you can look back and think, man, he was there. And, you know, he
Yeah.
is there. And
Yeah.
so let me ask you one question before we wrap up. First and foremost, your story of all of the abuse, all of the trauma, all of the attempts to not be here, finding the Lord and trusting him and knowing that he's there and he's healing you through these therapists. And after everything that you've been through, and you've been through a lot, I mean, we could be here for hours and hours talking about all of the details. But after everything that you have been through, your whole life that you can remember, and where you are today and where you are looking in the future, who would you say? I ask everybody this question at the end of my show. Who would you say, after everything, Kathryn, who would you say that you are today? Who is Kathryn today? Who are you?
I'm a survivor.
Mm.
I overcame the things that the enemy set before me that were meant to destroy me. And I know that someday I'm not going to have to live with this illness, because guess what? I have an eternal life that for the rest of my life, for all eternity, this is just this much of what is going to be for eternal. And so God gave me a story that I think just defiles the enemy. And so I'm his daughter. I'm resilient. I'm strong. I'm loving. I'm kind. And people can be bitter, but I chose not to.
Man, thank God, because even as a child that was silenced, and you know, a lot of children are children that are seen and not heard, but in your case in particular, a child that was silenced and shushed, and especially by a narcissistic person. We are witnesses to what God can do and transform you, Kathryn, that you have a voice, that your voice is heard, and your story is so powerful. I mean, here we are, we get to witness and hear your testimony, the journey that you've been through, but the transformation and where you are now. And my goodness,
Thank you.
it's amazing. It's amazing. And I thank God for you. And I thank God that you reached out and that you said yes to coming on and sharing, because I know for a fact that there is someone that is listening either today or will listen tomorrow or maybe in the future, that is either going through something similar themselves, or know someone that is going through something similar, who they can then share your story, and people are like, man, I can make it. I can do this.
Yeah.
God is good and he is with me, and I can get through this, and I'm going to have a story to tell myself.
Yes.
So
Amen.
thank you, Kathryn. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing such an incredible story. And thank you, everybody else that was listening. Thank you guys for sharing. Thank you for all of the kind words. Christy Betts says, your face just glowed, Kathryn, when you talked about the Lord.
I love him.
I have chills. Everyone is saying that you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. Awesome response, Kathryn. God is a good parent. Someone else shared, my daughter's name is Kathryn. Just a lot of support here, a lot of support here, a lot of people that are grateful for you to share your story. And Echoes and Embers, before we go, Echoes of Embers says, I tell you what, I wasn't expecting to relate so much, but he needed to hear so much and remember that I am blessed. I could say so much, but thank you, Kathryn.
Oh,
Oh, that's precious. That is
yeah.
precious. Thank you for tuning in, Echoes of Embers. Thank you for sharing your comment. That means a lot. And Tracy, TNT Adventure says, thank you for sharing your story, Kathryn.
Thank
So
you.
we appreciate you. And I cannot wait till you share your story again and again and again. Because my goodness, my new friend, boy, you are changing lives by sharing this testimony and sharing your story and letting other people know that they can heal, they can get through the hard stuff, they can do hard things.
Yeah.
And to keep telling people until somebody believes you, keep talking.
Yeah.
So thank you, Kathryn. I pray that you have a blessed night, a blessed rest of your week. And I
Thank you.
thank God that you are here. Thank you for sharing your story with all of us.
There's no judgment, only grace. Every scar has a sacred place. In the truth, we're not alone. Every story finds a home. Come as you are, don't be afraid. You belong here anyway. We rise in love, we heal in trust. This is where real begins. No judgment. This is your Prospera era, where dreams align with grace, abundance flows like rivers. You've stepped into your place. Rise, reign, and remember, you were born to shine. Welcome to your moment, Prospera, it's time.
We hope you enjoyed today's show on Prospera TV Network. Make it a point to visit us on YouTube and catch all your favorite shows anytime you want. Interested in hosting a show of your own? Or advertising your business on our network? Contact Elena Rodriguez,